Hello there, and welcome to my review / reaction to Doctor Who Series 10, Episodes 11 and 12, Wild Enough in Time and The Doctor Falls, both written by Steven Moffat, and both being the two-part series finale. I had so much I wanted to say, and I'm just struggling to know where to begin, so I'm going to have a look at some notes I made. Okay, so Wild Enough in Time was surprisingly excellent in places. I think there are some problems, which I will go through, but I think when it gets good, it gets really good, and I think that's applicable for both parts, actually. Part of me wonders if I should have done separate reviews. I'm not sure, just because there's so much to talk about. Okay, so there's the whole thing at the start of Wild Enough in Time with Missy's whole "I'm Doctor Who and these are my companions" exposition and comic relief. I apologise, Michelle Gomez, for that impression. But that was just... the thing is, Steven Moffat likes to throw in stuff like that to irritate the fans. And I understand that sometimes it can be fun to throw in little nods to tease the fans a little bit, but actually irritating the fans, and he's done this a few times before, but it's just... Steven Moffat, you're irritating the people who make Doctor Who money. Do you not think that, maybe I shouldn't actually irritate these people? Maybe that's why the merchandise doesn't need to be selling very well. Maybe that's why we basically have no merchandise for Series 10. I mean, we don't even have the soundtrack releases anymore, which is a real shame. If they ever want to announce that Series 9 soundtrack, that'd be quite good. Just wondering. Throwing it out there. You know, I don't mind the whole Doctor Who comment. I think perhaps it was a little too fourth wall breaking, even for Doctor Who. But it's the way it goes on and on and on and on, as if Steven Moffat's beating us over the head with it. And I just... I really didn't like it. After a while, you know, the novelty wore off. It wasn't funny to begin with, and then it just got really irritating for me. And then, thankfully, by the time I was about to scream at the TV, it stopped. But, you know, the whole "is that your real name" thing, I'm just like, no, don't, stop. You pushed it too far 5 minutes ago. Please stop. They just... Yeah, there's doing a little tease, and then there's just dragging this terrible joke through the dirt. But that's what they wanted to do. That's what Steven Moffat decided to do. But, yeah, Wild Enough in Time. I mean, this was just over a week ago now, and it's incredibly shocking. I mean, it starts off with this sort of light run-of-the-mill episode, and then turns into this horrible, dark, morbid episode just as soon as Bill gets shot. You know, we're building up the tension, and then as soon as Bill gets shot, I suppose it's almost the climax of the episode right there and then. It's Bill's death that just completely changes everything, and it completely changes exactly what the episode is going for. Now, then that leads into this whole series of flashbacks, which helps to re-establish who the Master is and his or her relation to the Doctor. But there's a bit of a problem with this. I understand that that's partly for the benefit of the new viewers, but why did we get this, like, what would it be, 5 episodes after Missy came back in the show? For anyone who is new to Doctor Who and did start watching from this series, which from the looks of the viewing figures isn't really many people at all, you know, you've already sat through several episodes with Missy. You don't get who she is, and Bill seems to know more than the viewer does, which I don't think... It kind of ruins the point. The whole soft reboot thing almost got thrown out the window with Extremis, and the way they reintroduced Missy. But maybe that's just me. Maybe non-fans would be able to understand it and everything. Who knows? But, you know, the flashbacks were really good. I really liked... You know, I mean, it's just such a terrible moment. I mean, it's brilliant, don't get me wrong, but it's such a horrible moment for the characters in the show, and the way Rachel Talalay pulls the camera out and you get to see the massive hole in Bill's chest from where she got shot, and I was just, yeah, I didn't expect Doctor Who to go that far, and it was just incredible. And there's the whole time dilation idea, which is something that I didn't think Doctor Who was going to do. I think Brian Cox did that in his Doctor Who talk, which is very interesting. Perhaps that's where Steven Moffat got it from. But you know, the way we have this lecture explaining it, and it's real world science. It's something that, well, it's a theory. I'm not sure if it's actually 100% true, but until someone decides to test it out, some very, very brave people, I'm sure, we won't know for definite. And there's also Venusian. Alright, this is where I pronounce it wrong. I always thought it was Venusian Aikido. Some people say Venusian Aikido. Okay. That was quite cool. Peter Capaldi finally gets to do that. I mean, he's jokes about doing that for ages, but yeah, we got to see it to the blue guy, who I guess is like connected to the blue guy from earlier in the series. That character just disappeared. A horrible thought that struck me. He probably died at the end of the story because no one was there to give him food and water and everything. He didn't know what happened. So they abandoned him to die. That's lovely. Sorry, I just ruined the whole episode for you. But there's the whole subplot with Bill's life in the hospital ward, which is really interesting. But Bill is completely unchanged by it. She's just waiting for the Doctor to come and get her, and I believe the Master says that it's for 10 years. 10 years! And Bill's just like, oh, finally, Doctor, you got to me. Not, you know, there's no drama with that, and I feel like it was a bit of a wasted opportunity on Steven Moffat's part. It's the companion being perhaps almost too dependent on the Doctor. I don't know, I just couldn't believe that she'd still be that upbeat. I don't know. Steven Moffat likes to exaggerate time in Doctor Who, and I think it never works when he does that. It doesn't really work in Time of the Doctor. It doesn't work. It doesn't actually work in Series 6, because Series 6 is meant to be set over like 200 years, isn't it? There's nothing about... it's all... Yeah, Steven Moffat tropes pretty much ruin the episode. But she does get the Doctor's psychic message, which is surprisingly creepy. I mean, someone pointed this out and it's kind of ruined the episode slightly for me, is that the Doctor spends all this time explaining to Missy, who probably knows this, and Nardole, who also probably knows this, and the blue guy, who should know this, about how the time dilation works, when really, you know, he takes the time, he unscrews his sonic screwdriver to get a pen, goes on the whiteboard and draws everything out. Could he not have done that on the way to get Bill, bearing in mind that they're going in a lift? Wouldn't that have cut it down to... You know, wouldn't that have cut it down by at least 5 years? But... maybe that's too much. But yes, Bill ends up being taken in by Razor, who of course turns out to be John Simm's master, which is an interesting twist. I only guessed it when he approached Missy, so I spent most of the episode going, this is kind of ruining the creepy atmosphere, because the hospital wards, so creepy. Like, it's really unsettling, and the lighting is brilliantly atmospheric, and the patients are terrifying, and the build up to Mondasian incitement, it's brilliant. And then you've got this Razor character who seems a bit too cartoonish, but knowing he's the master, actually, you can kind of justify it a bit. But yeah, and then there's a bit where Razor and Bill go onto the streets. I've got a little note here. It looks surprisingly green screened, considering I'm sure they went onto a real set. I've seen, or a real location, sorry. But I've seen, I think they did a little behind the scenes thing which showed them on the street, and I thought, oh, okay. Not sure why it looked so fake then. And then I also saw, not sure if it was a clip or a photo of the same scene against a green screen. So I'm not sure what happened there. Maybe there was some reshoots they needed to do. Who knows? It kind of ruined the moment a little bit, but the city actually looked really cool in both parts. It was a really great setting. It's a shame we saw so little of it, really. Yeah, and then you do get to the John Simm as the Master reveal, which was surprisingly long reveal. If you didn't guess when Razor approached Missy, then just like the 10 minutes or whatever of him going, oh, don't you recognise me? And she's like, no. And it's like, well, he's obviously the Master. Yeah, I guess that was meant to be a homage to sort of in the 80s when Anthony Ailey would disguise himself as all these different characters, which I always felt was a bit bizarre, but, you know, it's interesting as a homage. I don't know, it's very much with John Simm, they try to make him the much more traditional master, which works thematically with the episode. It does kind of go against what he was doing before, but actually I prefer John Simm in this two-parter, and not because he got a lot less screen time. You know, he's got the proper master goatee and he's got the black costume, and the laser screwdriver, of course, returns, even though, did it get destroyed? I don't know. I don't care. I think the laser screwdriver is cool. Yeah, and then there's Bill gets turned into a Mondasian Cyberman, and I was like, oh my god, that is terrifying, that is unsettling. I mean, I felt genuinely unsettled at the end of that episode, but I had this sneaking suspicion throughout that Bill is probably going to get brought back somehow, and I was a bit about that. I was a bit apprehensive about it. What they actually did was, it was interesting, actually. Actually, I might as well go into that now. As soon as she popped up, as soon as we saw the first shot of Bill as Bill in the Dr. Falls, I suddenly thought, oh no, they're going to come up with some excuse of, like, they just took off the Cyberman costume, as it were, the outside armour and stuff, and Bill is completely fine underneath, which I was very I'm just going to carry on doing a Sill impression, which I was very, very worried about, but actually that was what she thought was going on. It was all entirely in her head, and that was actually a thing I thought, you know what, if they are going to bring back Pearl Mackie for episode 12, a brilliant way to do that would be she sees herself as she thinks she looks, if you know what I mean. And that's what they did. They did that, and it worked brilliantly. One touch that I would have really liked, but then again the episode never cements it either way, would be that the Doctor sees her as Bill throughout. I can't remember what episode it is. I think it's Last Christmas, actually. So I'm trying to think of where I'm seeing a similarity. In Last Christmas, the Doctor doesn't notice that Clara's aged. It doesn't register with him. And I would have liked to have perhaps had that mentioned with Bill having become a Cyberman, because the Cybermen aren't really enemies of the Doctor. They can't be enemies. There's nothing to really fight against. The Cybermen are more of an idea that the Doctor opposes, and that's something they sort of play on at the beginning of the Doctor Falls. The Cybermen sort of rebel against the Masters, or the Master and the Mistress, because, you know, they're just there with this primary objective and they just complete it. They don't have any particular antagonistic feelings towards anyone. But the way Bill's arc was handled was very nice. The ending with her going off with Heather, the pilot, interesting callback. It's kind of hell-bent done right, in a sense. It's something that's previously established. It works. It's a payoff of sorts. The thing that ruined it, there were a couple of things that ruined it for me. First of all is that the pilot was Heather, or at least that's the way she seemed to be, and she was completely dry for a large chunk of it, which was possibly just because it was easier. And Bill could be dry as a water creature, which seemed a bit odd. It seemed a bit inconsistent with the previous episode. I mean, the whole dripping effect was the gimmick, if you like. Maybe there was a particular production reason they couldn't do that. And then there's this whole thing of, oh, you know, you could be human again. And as soon as that came up, I was like, no, don't do that. Thankfully, they didn't make Bill human again. But Steven Moffat, he still kept the line in, and they still didn't edit it out. Had they edited it out and it was in the original script, I could have gone, right, fine, it's not in the episode, it doesn't matter. But she has the option to come back from the dead. Or arguably from worse than dead, from becoming a Cyberman. And I feel like if she doesn't have any kind of consequences for that, not being human, being this water creature does, would just ruin it. But, you know, thankfully they didn't go that route, and it doesn't feel completely ruined. I felt Bill's semi-resurrection, because it was a semi-resurrection, it didn't seem too much like a cheat, and possibly because I was expecting it. it kind of worked. I don't think it worked 100%, but I think it's kind of like a 60% worked. You know, they just sold me on it. So well done, Steven Moffat. You managed to make essentially a good Hellbent. I mean, the Dr. Falls has a lot of similarities with Hellbent. The whole sort of Western idea with it, with the Doctor outside this barn defending it from an attacking army, in this case Cybermen. And of course the Cybermen, we get to see 3 different versions. We get to see the Mondasian Cybermen, who look brilliant. I think they could have done with sorting out the costumes, tightening them a bit. I think they looked a bit too baggy. Maybe that's just me. The 2006 Cybermen, or the Mondasian Cybermen, whatever we want to call them. The Cybermen without the Cybers logo on them. Which are great designs. Nice to see them come back, but I don't know. It's weird that they're the middle ground in a way. Although I suppose getting some more classic Cybermen would have been a bit much. Then again, we do get to see an army full of Mondasian, Cybers, and Nightmare and Silver Cybermen. I don't know what to call the new Cybermen. I guess new Cybermen. Yeah, the new Cybermen. It kind of brings to mind that new Cybermen aren't that great design-wise. They've kind of got a bit boring. All the Cybermen were flying, all of them. 6-year-old Pete would absolutely love that, because although it wasn't quite how 6-year-old Pete imagined it, because I remember when I got the Cyberman toy, I noticed there were a couple of things on the back, and I remember thinking that was like the Cyberman's jetpack. I had a jetpack so I could fly about. Yeah, I don't know, that's what I imagined when I was younger, so didn't get to see it, but hey ho, got something along those lines. Yeah, actually, while I'm here, 2 things actually about the Mondasian Cybermen. They got the gun wrong. No one else seems to be mentioning that. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. 10th Planet isn't exactly my favourite story ever. The gun is the little thing that clips onto the chest piece. Well, it's not little in 10th Planet, it's pretty huge. They clip it off and they zap people with it. From memory, they don't. The lantern on their head doesn't get used for that. It does get used in Revenge of the Cybermen, but in Revenge of the Cybermen, it's not a lantern; it's an actual gun. You can see it's a gun. So why did they get that wrong? And also, why was it an Auton sound effect? Just throwing it out there. Nitpicks, I know, but I can't quite understand. You know, they went through the BBC sound effects vault and went Auton sound effect. Yeah, let's stick that in for the Cybermen. You know, it doesn't matter whether the sound is like new Cyberman gun sound or whatever. It doesn't particularly bother me. But they used the sound for a different monster that's very much... I don't know, maybe it's because Spirit from Space is Doctor... I mean, it must be one of the first Doctor Who stories I saw, because I got it on video, so... says how long ago that was. But yeah, I just... whatever. They did that. Is what it is. Yeah, seeing the Cyberman army attacking the house was cool. It was cool. I think it could have been done better. Actually, Rachel Taylor, they did a really, really good job. Much better than the Ice Warrior attack in Empress of Mars. Most of Doctor Who doesn't seem to know how to handle some of the action scenes. Guys, please improve on that, because there's a lot of other TV shows that are doing it so much better than you. It just looks a bit cheap as soon as we got this big action sequence. But the 12 Doctors fight against the Cybermen in the end. Brilliant sequence. Love the score. I mean, it's the reprise of, I think it's called Breaking the Wall. Again, if we ever get an official Doctor Who Series 9 soundtrack release, we might find out. But it's a great song that I think, in a way, I prefer that as the 12th Doctor's theme or motif. But yeah, maybe we'll get something along those lines for his full regeneration scene at some point. Which I'm going to have to come back to a bit later, aren't I? Okay, right, and then there's all the stuff with Missy, which I really thought about it, because I felt that Missy and the Master kind of felt... It didn't seem to entirely work in the Doctor Folds as a whole. Looking back, I actually realise, or at least I think I've realised, what Steven Moffat was trying to do with that. Which is that Missy is trying to be good again. She's trying, she can't quite... She wants to be good, she's striving to be friends with the Doctor again, which is what she wanted. I mean, that's what she said she wanted in Death in Heaven, and we get to see sort of the reverse of Death in Heaven here, with the Doctor appealing to Missy instead of Missy appealing to the Doctor. And she's almost there. And then John Simm's master shows up, and suddenly she gets tempted back into evil, like some kind of relapse. And I think that's such a brilliant idea. And he's the kind of devil on her shoulder throughout the rest of the story. And I think that's such a brilliant idea, because she's constantly fighting back against him, but she also wants to join in, and she can't seem to quite decide. Now, arguably, that's inconsistent writing. I like to look at it as it's Missy sort of facing this inner conflict that she has within herself, and John Simm being the physical embodiment of the old master, and her trying to be the new master. And of course she ends up killing the old master to be the new master, but the old master doesn't want to change, so kills her. I think it's interesting, actually. Missy isn't dead, right? So did we... I don't know, maybe Chris Chibnall doesn't want to use the master in any capacity, and maybe that's why Missy appears to be killed for real. We didn't get to see a regeneration scene for John Simm, and that seems a shame. Especially because we are told the regeneration's going to happen. Could we not see the regeneration scene? Was it cut? Was it not filmed? I don't know. Maybe it's because it's an extended episode. I'm annoyed about that. Nardol's exit was nicely underplayed, actually. I quite liked it. Although there's a bit of a cliffhanger to the story of the Cybermen are going to come back. Does that mean that Nardole, for the rest of his days, is fighting the Cybermen and saving, the ship with all the people? I don't know. And I also... This is... Right, yeah, let's go on to Peter Capaldi as the Doctor. I absolutely love how he goes out. He just wants to try and save all of these people no matter what. He's ready to kill himself. In fact, he almost wants to get himself killed. When he comes back at the end, he's about to regenerate. He doesn't want to change, and at least I saw that as him wanting to die. He doesn't want to regenerate. He doesn't want to keep living. He just wants it all to end. And that's why he went off into the battle, and that's why he seemed to die, but the universe wanted him back. And that's why he came back in the end, but he didn't want to. It's like a much more morbid Kaz Vandrazani in a way, but, you know, he is this lone gunman almost, you know, waiting for the Cybermen, protecting the people and putting the people first, and I think that's a really fitting conclusion to his character. And then of course we have a Christmas special to worry about, although quite where they'll go with an actual arc for him should be interesting. And then of course we get David Bradley's cameo at the end as the first Doctor. This has kind of been spoilt for me, although I wasn't mad about it actually, because I initially heard it as a rumour and I was like, I remembered hearing about something along those lines a long time ago and thought, nah, they're not going to do it. But then suddenly David Bradley got asked about it and he was like, maybe, I can't say anything about that. And I was like, hang on a second, is that true? Is he going to have a cameo? And no, he's properly returning in the Christmas special. He properly appears. And, you know, I mean, David Bradley was brilliant as William Hartnell in An Adventure in Space and Time. When I first heard about this, I was a bit worried that because he does sound very, very different, that it wouldn't be quite right. But actually, no, as soon as I heard him in the distance, I got really excited. Then he comes up and he's in full costume as the First Doctor, presumably about to regenerate from the end of the 10th planet. And I think that's brilliant. And Steven Moffat's managed to really cement these parallels, which is perhaps a bit too much fan service, but actually I think it should be interesting to see how those parallels are explored in the Christmas special and how both Doctors go off to regenerate at the end. Oh, I'm just really excited, and they released that promo picture of Peter Capaldi with David Bradley, and it just, yeah, I've got a massive smile on my face. I'm just really excited to see what they do with this in the Christmas special. Maybe we'll get a little preview at Comic-Con. That'd be nice. BBC, can we have like just a little teaser? Maybe like a poster art and a title and a first synopsis, if not a teaser. I don't know. I'd quite like to see something. I'm just really excited to see what they do, where they go with this. And of course, who's going to be the next Doctor? We don't know. We still don't know. I was expecting some kind of little reveal, a subtle reveal at the end of the episode, but no, we didn't get that. So, when are we going to find out who the next Doctor is? Maybe we'll never find out. Maybe this is the end for Doctor Who as we know it. Of course not. Chris Chibnall's taking over, and that should be very interesting. So yes, in summary, what were my thoughts on Wild Enough in Time and The Doctor Falls? Overall, with brilliant performances from the cast, fantastic, creepy and dramatic direction from Rachel Talalay, who is incidentally my favourite Doctor Who director, and I really hope she has a big Hollywood career ahead of her, and a mostly satisfying conclusion to the series and to the story as a whole. But with some slight tonal inconsistencies, the story completely changes within part 2, which I feel a bit conflicted about, and a lot of underdeveloped plot threads. I mean, there's Cybermen Scarecrows, that never really goes anywhere. Again, there's the blue guy, there's the ship. It feels very, very open, which might work for some. It kind of works in areas for me, but I think it is worth acknowledging. And the Cybermen, the origin of the Cybermen is very much underplayed, and it's very confusing to see exactly what they're going for. I don't know, I feel like this is another alternate version of the Cybermen's history, alternate version of their genesis, like Rise of the Cybermen, and I feel quite disappointed that, including spare parts, we now got 3 different Cyberman origin stories. I also realise this has been an extended review, but considering this is a 2-part episode and one of them was an extended episode, I think it's kind of justified. So yes, how do I wrap this up? Because usually I say, I'll see you all next week or in a couple of weeks or whatever for the next episode, but that's it. That's Series 10 over as a whole. It's probably the most solid series we've had, but it's also the most consistent, so it's kind of weird that there haven't been many standout episodes. Thin Ice and Empress of Mars are my favourites. I think there's lots of good episodes. There's a few okay episodes. Yeah, it's sort of a mix of great, a little bit great, most bit of good, and a bit of okay. So yeah, that's kind of Series 10 in a nutshell, really. And what's a Christmas special going to be like? I'm excited to see what happens in the future. So, unless something terrible happens, I mean, I'm currently having problems with my editing software, so I think I'm going to have to buy a new one. Hopefully, I'll see you all at Christmas, discussing the 2017 Christmas special and Peter Capaldi's exit from Doctor Who. So until then, thank you for watching. Thank you for watching if you have all of these Series 10 review reactions, and I'll see you all next time. Right, now I've got to turn this off. It's weird, I feel like it's the end of something. Ah.